Thanks for listening to Baxie's Musical Podcast. If you like what you hear today, be sure to follow along, rate it, like it, share it aggressively with all your friends. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok for regular updates on future guests. Today, we're brought to you by Metro Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram at Chicopee. Stop by their state-of-the-art dealership next to BJ's or Big Y, or stop by MetroJeep.com and make it Metro. And then drive home in your new Metro Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram today.
It's Baxie's Musical Podcast.
As you know, every band, every musician, every composer, whether it be classical, pop, country, or rock, starts off by playing cover songs. If you've ever taken a guitar lesson or was forced against your will to play the violin or the accordion, you learned by playing somebody else's music. It's just a fact of life. And while most people who play music tend to stick with cover songs, there are some people who, while fully capable of playing their own songs, are able to take that cover song and make it their own. The funny thing is, there are loads of songs out there that you probably didn't even realize were cover songs. Dazed and Confused by Led Zeppelin, not an original. Neither was Cyndi Lauper's Girls Just Want to Have Fun or Eric Clapton's Cocaine. All classic songs, all written and recorded by other people first. But then there's this category of artists who record cover songs specifically with the idea of bringing something new to the table. Someone who doesn't just offer a note-by-note recreation of what's already been done, but will deconstruct a song and rebuild it to create something that is totally unique and original. And if you have the ability to make that fun to listen to, then I think you've done your job. A great example of this would be the latest EP by the Candy Whips. The name of the record is called Moonlight, and it features 8 classics from the Doo Wop era of R&B and early rock and roll. Each song fed through a filter of 80s new wave, synth-pop, and krautrock. And while that may seem like an insane combination, the end result is a blast. Not just a blast from the past, it's also a lot of fun to listen to. These aren't just great timeless pop songs. These are songs that have been rebuilt at every level, and it's awesome to listen to how they did it. The Candy Whips were started as a side project by Wendy Stonehenge, the former lead singer of the Oakland, California-based glam rock band Glitter Wizard. And what started off as a simple COVID-era idea during lockdown eventually would spark 3 full-length records. But in this latest release, Wendy tackles songs like I Only Have Eyes for You by the Flamingos, or Mr. Sandman by the Chordettes, even a great version of Stranded in the Jungle by the Cadets. It's a total departure from Wendy's old days with Glitter Wizard, which is also worth listening to. The record was released by Josie Cotton's Robot Kitten Records, which has a long history of releasing music that's really hard not to like. To talk about it is my guest today, Wendy Stonehenge, from Candy Whips and formerly a Glitter Wizard, on Baxie's Musical Podcast. Yeah, I've had a chance to listen to the new record, Moonlight, and I thought it was an absolute blast to listen to. And I think part of the reason why I enjoyed it so much, all of the songs that are on this record are songs that I grew up hearing, and they're so ingrained, in your head, and it's hard to imagine them being, reimagined and re-recorded in the way you did it until you hear it done, and you say, "Wow, that's it gives you a whole new appreciation for these songs." How did you come up with this idea to go and reinterpret this group of songs?
Yeah, so when I first started doing Candy Whip stuff, it was during lockdown. I had a lot of time on my hands and had a couple synthesizers that I, had played around with a little bit, but hadn't really dug into them. So I decided it was time to really learn the equipment. And as I was doing that, there was a collective of musicians online that were doing these semi-regular things where they'd put out a theme and people would do covers of something along that theme. One was, TV show themes. Another one was one-hit wonders. So I'd done a couple of those just for fun to kind of get situated with things. So here we are a few years later, and you listen to so much of the late 70s and early 80s, new wave and synthy stuff, and a lot of that stuff is really informed by 50s and 60s rock and roll. And so this is kind of my way of uh, just doing that a little bit more literally, going back and actually reinterpreting the things that informed that music in the first place.
When people think of, going retro on certain things, they go back 20, 30 years. Some of these
Hmm.
songs go back 70 years and beyond. I mean, for some people, the way they're hearing them, they may be hearing some of these songs for the very first time. I mean, tell me about your thoughts about reintroducing these songs.
Yeah, I mean, when I was growing up, oldies radio was always on in the car. And now oldies don't really exist on terrestrial radio in most places. So it's weird thinking about how kids growing up now might not ever hear these songs, whereas when we were young, they were just around all the time. So if somebody hears this album and they discover these songs for the first time, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I've been working at a classic rock station for the last 30 years. And oldies now, it would be, Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin.
Yeah,
Classic rock now we're looking at Nirvana and Pearl Jam as classic rock bands. And as funny as it seems, I mean, that stuff is 25, 30 years old already. And so it's like, everyone has a different interpretation of what oldies really are. But even the songs that you're talking that you're doing even precede what the traditional oldies stations would be playing right now. I mean, the Flamingos, I Only Have Eyes for You. It's a classic, but
uh-huh.
it's like one of those songs. It's like one of those songs. Like you wonder would a 21-year-old kid know that song, and even if they don't, they listen to it and say, "Wow." The way the Candy Whips did it's a beautiful, earnest song, even with different, instrumentation and a different arrangement. Pretty
Yeah.
remarkable how you did it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
So how did you choose these specific songs? I mean, obviously you could have gone through like a whole catalog of songs. Was there a group of songs that you just felt like, these need an interpretation, or were there others that you thought about it or just didn't get to?
I definitely, initially went for the real heavy hitters. A lot of these are kind of the some of the biggest songs within that genre. So I hit those first. And then as I was trying to round out the album, I started digging a little bit deeper. There's one track on there that was suggested by my friend Shannon Shaw from Shannon and the Clams. She's obviously a big Doo Wop fan, so I was like, "What are some deep cuts?" And she had a whole playlist ready to go. She sent it to me right away. So one of the songs came from there. My cover of Cherry Pie I picked because my wife is a professional DJ and Cherry Pie is her DJ handle. So that was just kind of a little personal note. But yeah, a lot of these are just the ones that are like super ingrained in me from my childhood.
As I'm listening to it, some of these songs have been covered so many times, like "Run Through the Jungle," which the New York Dolls had done, and not so unlike the original of it. But some of these songs have gone through a bunch of different interpretations over the years. In an effort to make these songs unique, were you looking for a specific sound of these songs? Was there something specific about these songs that felt like, okay, it would work in a more electronic vein, or
Hmm.
or was it just more like these are the songs I really love, and these are the ones I'm going to work with?
Yeah, I think I just picked the songs I wanted to do and I made it work.
Yeah.
And some of them it was really instantaneous how I was going to do it. I'd be like, okay, I got this song, and I sit down. It has to sound like this. This is the only way that it's going to work. And then other ones, I was like, okay, this one's a little weird. Some of them I tried two, three, four different versions before I found the sound that it worked with. So yeah, it depended on the song.
So people may remember you from Glitter Wizard, which is very, very different than the kind of music from the Candy Whips. Had you been thinking at the time that you wanted to try something completely different, or did it just naturally occur that way?
I rarely stick to the same genre from one band to the next. Candy Whips was an idea that had been brewing in the back of my mind for several years, but I just didn't really have the time to add another band to my schedule. And so, obviously during COVID, I wasn't doing anything with my regular band, so initially it was just going to be, I'm going to record one album, I'm going to put it up for free on the internet. A couple of my friends will listen to it, and it was a fun little project. But when I had finished the first album, Automaton, I sent it to my friend Bruce Duff over at Kitten Robot Records and asked him to master it for me. And he was like, "This is really good. I'm working on this upcoming new label with Josie Cotton. Can we put this out on cassette?" So I was like, "Oh, okay, maybe I'm onto something here." And when that album came out, I had multiple show offers that week, and I was like, "Well, I'm just one guy that barely knows how to play his instrument. I can't do this live." So, for a little while, it just continued to be a bedroom recording project, but Glitter Wizard was kind of dying down and we weren't doing as much. And I was like, okay, maybe it's time to put a band together and turn this into a live project as well. So it just kind of evolved from there.
I've interviewed a bunch of people who are on that label, Kitten Robot, and even interviewed Josie too.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like nearly everything that she has signed to that label, there's just something about many of the people that are on there. The music is just plain fun, and in a way, it kind of reflects who Josie is. And I've talked to Frank Meyer and Haley and the Crushers, Jack Grisham from TSOL. All of those records that have been released have, I don't want to say they sound the same, but they all have a certain, I don't know, a joyfulness to it, a certain fun aspect to it. And I think that's really cool that appears to be what Josie has been looking for with this label and the things that she's decided to sign and release.
Yeah, you can tell that it's a label that is owned and operated by actual musicians rather than business people.
One of the things that is so clear in some of the interpretations, especially on Moonlight, is some of the influences that are there are pretty obvious. I mean, you hear things, everything from like a Gary Newman to a Suicide to Kraftwerk and Neu, but then there's also other stuff too, especially in the other Candy Whips records too, where you hear a lot more. I don't want to maybe like Oingo Boingo or a few others that are in there. How would you describe what influenced you in doing the songs in this way?
Yeah, I mean, when I started doing Candy Whips, I was getting pretty deep into just all the people that were doing, for lack of a better word, synth pop. And that includes the more experimental bands like Neu and Kraftwerk, but also bands like Duran Duran and Simple Minds and kind of some of the more mainstream stuff. And the whole project has just kind of been more like seeing where the instrument takes me. A lot of the time I'll just sit down with a synthesizer and I'll just be twiddling knobs until I find a sound that I like. And I'm like, okay, what can I do with this? Where can this sound lead me? Which is part of what I really enjoy about synthesizers is a single instrument can give you so many different sounds that can lead you down so many different avenues. So a lot of it's just letting the instrument lead the way.
So when it comes to like the other things that you had done with Candy Whips, these are all more originals, but when it comes to the interpretation of these older songs, do you find it to be like a different experience doing your own songs as opposed to reinterpreted covers?
Yeah, a lot of doing the original stuff is often writing as I'm recording, whereas with the covers, I'm kind of going through. With this album, a lot of what I did is I'd sit down and I'd listen to the song. I'd be like, okay, so I'm going to learn the bass line first. And so I'd go to the synth and find a sound to reinterpret the bass line, and I'd record the bass line. And then I'd be, okay, well, now I'm going to put down just like the basic vocal harmony. And I do that. And then I have to figure out like, oh, am I going to use a vocoder for this? I'm going to use, how am I going to portray the vocals on this one? And then I'd be like, okay, well, now I've got all these vocal harmonies. So I have to find a new synth that is going to sound good doing those parts. And so a lot of it, I didn't have a fully realized version in my head. And I was just going through instrument by instrument and figuring out, okay, how am I going to do this part? How am I going to do this part? And then it all just kind of fall into place.
So how much equipment do you have in your house? It sounds like you got like a whole garage full of stuff.
I have a small handful of synthesizers, and then a lot of it was using, the built-in software synths within Logic, which is what I use to record this. And, there's thousands of synths in there, and you can do modeling within those synths in there. So it's kind of endless, the sounds you can come up with.
So, so the difference between what you had been doing with say Glitter Wizard and
Hmm.
Candy Whips, it's totally different. But in a way, does the process of writing songs between either one has that been different, or has the use of all that technology made it different for you?
It kind of depends whether you're talking about Candy Whips as far as like my solo material or
Mm,
Candy Whips the band, because although I'm doing music under that umbrella for both, my approach is different. Um, so when I'm writing music for the band, it's more similar to how I did it for Glitter Wizard, where I kind of have the basic idea for a song, but I bring it to the band and kind of allow everyone to elaborate on their own parts. But when I'm doing the solo stuff, like I did for Moonlight, I'm doing everything myself, so
yeah.
it's pretty different.
So with Glitter Wizard, and obviously this is a band that you were in, a notable band for a number of years. When
Mhm.
people get used to you doing one thing one way, it's sometimes hard for people to accept that you're doing something totally new. When you started to record and release music under Candy Whips, what was the reaction for people? Were they accepting of it right away, or they say, "What are you doing here?" How did they react to this?
I think people are pretty stoked. Those who know me well know that I always have two or three music projects going on at once, and they're all very different. For instance, I've had a country band called The Ugly I've been doing for about a decade. I've had various punk bands that I've done simultaneously with Glitter Wizard. So, I've kind of been all over the map musically. But I think people who primarily knew me from Glitter Wizard were pretty into the Candy Whip stuff. It's interesting. As I've been branching out into this genre of music, a lot of my musical contacts are people that are more in like the hard rock metal scene. And I'll post something about like some new synth pop band that I'm into, and some metalhead that I'd never suspect is like, "Oh, dude, this is really cool. Like, I've never heard this before." So it's cool discovering how other people also have these same musical tastes outside of what I know them for.
I always think it's hysterical when you talk to somebody and you assume they do one music or one genre of music, and you assume, well, that they must never ever diverge from that. But there have
Yeah.
been times when I've talked to somebody and they actually reveal like these, I don't know, these guilty pleasures, and you just go, really? I mean, a few years ago, I talked to Frank Bello from Anthrax, and
Uh-huh.
really cool guy, and we wound up really kind of getting into it a little bit. We talked about his love of Kiss. Well, he's a metal guy, that makes sense. But then we wound up having this discussion about how much he loves Barbara Streisand. I'm going, what? The guy from Anthrax he loves Barbara Streisand, and it's always funny to me, where people kind of reach back and that when they're bored, what records are they reaching back and say, nothing beats Barbara Streisand.
That's a weird one.
I didn't expect that one at all, but yet it's totally strange that you expect a guy that's playing thrash for most of his career, that it's Barbara Streisand that really relaxes him. You know?
Yeah, totally. But you know what? Even though that is a weird thing to be into, I didn't know anybody actually like Barbara Streisand. Uh, you know, Someone who invented like thrash metal, of course, he didn't grow up listening to thrash metal because it
No.
didn't exist yet. So obviously he's going to have other influences. And I think when you listen to music projects that are kind of a throwback to an older sound, what what differentiates the good bands from the bad bands is the good bands are also pulling in influences from other genres. Whereas the not so good ones, you can tell their only influences are those bands that they kind of sound like.
Well, I think that's true, especially as in songwriting, where it's kind of like, if you're going to write a book, you only become a really good writer if you read a hell of a lot of books.
Hmm.
Same thing with songwriting. I think the best songwriters are the ones that have like a very wide toolbox to go to. You may not need to know, everything about composition, but to have heard different kinds of music, I can't help but think that has to be incredibly helpful. If you can listen to, like, jazz may help you, or power pop may help you, or just regular pop music may help a metal guy. I mean, that it's all open for people to use, not rip off, but to use as like like a bookmark in how
Yeah.
they create. So obviously, if I'm getting you right, you're kind of saying the same exact thing.
Yeah. And, a lot of the times a song that I write will start from hearing maybe just like a brief clip of a song from an entirely different genre. And then I get that riff kind of looping in my head. And as it's looping, it kind of evolves and turns into something else. And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to take that version that's been looping in my head and I'm going to turn it into something entirely different. So, listening to different types of music is really inspiring to me. And I feel like that always strengthens what I'm doing, no matter where that other influence is coming from.
So this is kind of like a business question in a way. I don't want to get like too into the weeds on it, but I mean, when you're talking about songs like you're doing on the new record on
Mhm.
Moonlight, some of these songs are 40, 50 years old and not at the point where they are public domain type of
Yeah.
songs. But how did you go about getting the rights to do these songs? Was it a difficult process or was it relatively simple?
Um, I didn't actually have to do any of the paperwork on that. The label took care of it, which is very nice of them. Um, I don't think that it's too difficult to do that these days. There's so many online services that can facilitate that for you. I will say that part of the reason I didn't pursue putting this album out on physical media is because I think that would become a little more complicated for an all covers album. So, this one we just paid the minimal fees and put it up for free for streaming for everyone. Whereas if we were trying to actually press it on vinyl or
Right.
something, I think it might have been a little more complicated.
So as you talk about wanting to do like a bunch of different projects, now that this is out
Hmm.
and you'll be, I assume you'll probably be on the road with us. What do you see as like the next big project for you? Does Candy Whips continue after this? And are there thoughts about what you might want to take this to?
Oh yeah, Candy Whips the band is working on new material right now. I think we've got enough new material for the first half of the next album. So we're just gonna continue to keep writing and working on new stuff. I've also got a few songs that I'm collaborating with an LA band called Mirthquake. So we're probably gonna release a few songs hopefully next year. But yeah, I'm always writing, churning out new stuff. So plenty of stuff coming down.
I was reading some of the biographical press releases and all this other stuff about playing live and
Hmm.
taking the Candy Whips on the road and the kind of show that you guys do and that there's really a show to it. Very visual. Can you explain a little bit what you guys are doing on stage?
I mean, I always try, no matter what project I'm doing, I always try and put on a show when you're in a live setting. Whether that's stage antics or props or costumes or light shows or whatever. If you pay to come and see my band, I'm not I'm not going to be the guy that like rolls out of bed and puts on a flannel and stares at his feet on stage the whole time. So yeah, we get dressed up. We got moves. We try and keep it entertaining.
And one of the things that's so true, especially the earlier works with Candy Whips, there is an underlying sense of humor about it, which is I think it's great when you see a band willing to do that, willing to have fun with the music that they're playing. I mean, I assume that's part of the plan with Candy Whips is just have fun with this.
Yeah, of course. I mean, rock and roll is supposed to be fun. It is a fun music, and some bands forget that, and those bands aren't very good to see live.
Well, I mean, it's absolutely true, and the truth is, if you're going to spend money to see a band, you don't want to walk out of there feeling like, well, I did more watching that band than the band did on stage. So, but you do see that. So it's kind of refreshing to see a band look at live performance like that. It's like, we're putting on a show here, and it should be all about the show and having fun and entertaining people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as far as Glitter Wizard, I mean, you talk about that, kind of dying down. Is that a thing of the past now? Would that ever be reconsidered again, or is that just what's done is done there?
I wouldn't say never, but there are no plans with it. We do have a Halloween cover show that we put on every year, and so we're still continuing to do that.
Very cool.
But yeah, as far as like doing regular Glitter Wizard shows, we're not really active right now.
Now, as far as the Candy Whips go, I mean, you're going to be doing live shows. Are you looking to tour around the states, or is it we're not at that point yet?
We've got a couple dads in the band and we all have jobs. So doing big tours is not really in the cards for us, but we're going to continue to do kind of more regional West Coast touring.
Well, Wendy, like I said, I really enjoyed the records. It is a whole lot of fun, and anyone that remembers those songs or has any recollection of them whatsoever will be, I think they'll be really impressed with what you've done. Not only some of these songs are not. We think of like 50s doo wop and early rock and roll as like simple songs. Not all of them are simple. Some of them are pretty complicated, beautiful songs, but they're not all easy.
When I was learning Mr. Sandman, that song is surprisingly complex.
Yeah.
Just so many like weird key changes and harmonies, and it took me a while to learn the parts for that one. It was challenging.
Even singing those songs, I mean, it's very easy to go flat when you're trying to sing those. Real easy to get lost in the shuffle of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Wendy, congratulations on it. Like I said, it's a lot of fun. I can't wait to hear more stuff down the road from the Candy Whips.
Thank you. I really appreciate being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Wendy. Have a good day.
All right. You too.
The name of the new album from the Candy Whips is called Moonlight. It's available now on Josie Cotton's Robot Kitten Records. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can reach me at bax@rock102.com. I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks to Metro, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram at Chicopee for their support, but most of all, thanks to you for listening to Baxie's Musical Podcast.